would be lost. But Brereton was adamant. All in all, nobody was really happy with the plan. And over all this loomed one great unanswered question. How many Germans were there on the ground? Nobody really knew. The soldiers who were to fight their way up the airborne carpet to Arnhem, the troops of 30 Corps, were in good spirits after several spectacular weeks.
As far as 30 Corps was concerned, it was in that flush of delight to be out of the bloodbath in the Normandy bocage. And this, the beginning of Market Garden, was great fun.
In a cinema behind the front line, General Horrocks briefed his officers. He was a charismatic officer who had fought with Montgomery in the desert campaigns.
He stimulated people. He brought a sense of urgency and confidence. He radiated confidence.
Well, the Horrocks briefing was pure theatre. Horrocks strode in and very nonchalantly said, "I'm now going to tell you about an operation that you can tell your grandchildren about. A mighty board there'll be." I can remember thinking what a very good salesman Horrocks was.
On Sunday, the 17th of September, the Air Armada took off.
It was spread right over the sky. You just stood in wonder. You didn't know we had so many aircraft, as it were. You know, you were surprised. And of course, don't forget, they were trailing gliders as well.
Watching from a factory near the front line, General Horrocks saw the planes with the airborne troops pass over him on their way north. He gave the order to attack. "600 guns opened fire. The tanks moved forward, with the Irish Guards in the lead. The offensive had begun. It was down this road that the Irish Guards attacked that afternoon. Behind them, the column stretched back for 50 miles. Troops, trucks, guns, bridging equipment, and assault boats. The road was only wide enough for 2 vehicles to pass, and every single bullet, bomb, and tin of bully beef would have to come this way. A few hundred yards ahead of them, British guns laid down a wall of high explosive, a creeping barrage that moved slowly forward at just 8 miles an hour.
We were somewhat wary because one had a front, one road wide, going 60 miles into Indian territory. So you kept your eyes east and west in case you were going to be attacked.
As they rumbled forward behind the barrage, they had little idea of the German positions. In fact, the Germans were waiting for them just 3 miles from the British start line. These hollows are the remains of German trenches. They'd been dug in here with some anti-tank guns, but the barrage had destroyed the guns. All they had left were light, handheld anti-tank weapons. As the British came up the road, the Germans sat tight and waited for their chance. The Germans let 8 tanks pass their position before opening fire, Then they made their move.
And all of a sudden we stopped. The bad news began to filter back, and you could see the black smoke going up. And we lost 9 tanks in a row.
The whole 50-mile column ground to a halt. A few German foot soldiers had stopped an army. If the plan was to work, every minute counted, and it took the Irish Guards another 40 minutes to resume their advance. That morning, the men of the British Airborne Division also had a sense of confidence as they took off.
September the 17th, an enormous feeling of excitement, and I think a lot of the ones who had fought in North Africa and realized just how tough the Germans could be were a bit skeptical, but in the main, the rest was so fed up with being buggered about after 16 cancelled operations that they said, oh, Christ's sake, let's get on with it. Let's go. Let's do it.
The British paratroopers' drop zone was near Arnhem, north of the Rhine, 60 miles behind the German lines. There was almost no opposition on the landing grounds. The British had achieved total surprise.
It's an immense armada. It's a lovely day, hardly any flak, no German fighters to upset us. So as a ride, it was a dolly. As a drop, it was perfect. And the whole brigade was ready to move off in an hour.
The paratroopers were in a hurry. They had to collect all their kit and march on towards their objective, Arnhem and its bridges, which lay 6 miles away through woods and villages.
The first problem that I realized was that on both sides of this road were some fairly high wire fences. And I realized that if we ran into a very narrow front to organize ourselves on, we wouldn't be able to do anything about it.
The British commander, Major General Roy Urquhart, was fighting with one hand tied behind his back. Only half the division had landed that day, and half these men would have to dig in to protect the landing zones for the next contingent. This left only a quarter of the division to strike out for the bridge. General Urquhart sent his reconnaissance squadron ahead in jeeps to make a dash for the bridge. But the German troops near Arnhem had already reacted to the landings. German rifles, machine guns and mortars pounded the advancing British. This is where the battle took place. You can still see where the mortar bombs fell. Here, where the grass is growing thicker in the craters. There was now no chance of a lightning seizure of the all-important bridge. Just as with the Guards' tanks, 60 miles away to the south, and at about the same time, a scratch group of German infantry was holding up a much larger British force. The German line, on that ridge, lay squarely in the path of 2 of the 3 parachute battalions. Neither would be able to reach the bridge as planned that day.
We'd actually run into the main defence line that had been set up by the Germans to defend Arnhem. It was quite evident to all of us on the ground that we weren't going to get there by going forwards.